An ex-Marine and Yale Law School graduate reflects on his views, his upbringing in Ohio, and his familial roots in Kentucky. That is the focus of today's book review video. Hello everyone, this is Ben Caberly here, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit the subscribe button for new content here in this channel. Thank you for joining me today. This marks my first video of 2021. I know last year was extremely rough on all of us, and this year started to feel the same. Nonetheless, thank you for taking the time to escape and join me here for another book review video. In this video, I will be discussing the memoir Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. Hillbilly Elegy marks my first book read for 2021. It took me only a week to read J.D. Vance's memoir. This book was published in 2016, coinciding with the rather divisive election of that year. I read Hillbilly Elegy because I had heard recent word about the Netflix adaptation of Hillbilly Elegy that was released in 2020. I was hearing and reading about the mixed to negative reviews that this film adaptation of J.D. Vance's book was receiving. With all this controversy and with all this uproar regarding the production and the execution of this particular work, I wanted to get a hold of this book and see for myself what all the fuss and what all the uproar was regarding Hillbilly Elegy. Fortunately, I was able to get a copy of Hillbilly Elegy out of my local library and go on to read this particular book. I'm someone who, if I can get a copy of a particular book from the library, I generally do that instead of just spending $15 buying a book. I usually just can get it for free at the library as a way of saving money. Fortunately, I was able to get a copy of Hillbilly Elegy, as I mentioned just now, from my public library and read it, and now I'm here and more than happy to share my thoughts on this particular story. I also read this book because this book very much coincides with everything that we've been experiencing and everything that we've been facing the last 4 years in this country and in this world, and that we're still now experiencing and facing, especially on a political and a social level. So I wanted to get a hold of the story, and I'm glad I took the time to read this book because I have quite a bit in common with J.D. Vance, which I will get to a little more later in this video. Hillbilly Elegy is a memoir about the early years of J.D. Vance, the author of this book. Earlier on in the book, J.D. Vance gives a background description of his family. He talks about how in the 18th and 19th century, immigrants from Scotland and Ireland immigrated from their native lands to the United States, and many of them settled in the Appalachian regions and in states such as Kentucky and West Virginia. Then during the post-war era, so we're talking about the 1940s and the 1950s, a lot of natives from the state of Kentucky, they migrated to the northern states, including Ohio, which is the state from which J.D. Vance originates. Two of the people that migrated from Kentucky to Ohio just happened to be J.D.'s grandparents, Mama and Papa, which he refers to them by those names in the book. From there, we get a glimpse and we see the childhood and the early years of J.D. Vance unfold that he tells about in this book, and all the hardships and all the struggles that he faced as a child, and as he became a young adult. Hillbilly Elegy is a childhood memoir. It's also a coming-of-age story, even though it's a true story and it's nonfiction. It actually happened. Another major part of Hillbilly Elegy is the unfortunate hardships and the setbacks that he faced growing up. There was the abuse that he experienced and that he faced largely from his mother. There was the addictions, there was the screaming matches and the shouting matches that he experienced and that he witnessed as a child growing up in Ohio. And there's also the fact that he came from a dysfunctional family, and as you're reading the book, you really don't get a sugar-coated look into this family. JD doesn't sugarcoat anything about his family and everything that occurred over the years with his family that he reveals to you in this memoir of his earlier life. At first, I was reluctant to read Hillbilly Elegy. I think part of the reason why I was reluctant to read Hillbilly Elegy is J.D. Vance's politics. Now, I did some research and I read that it turns out that Hillbilly Elegy's author, J.D. Vance, he's a right-wing conservative. Now, politically, I consider myself more left-leaning. I'm definitely more to the left of J.D. Vance. So at first, I was a little hesitant to read this book, but ultimately, I decided to read this book because, I was very curious and I was very intrigued about this book, and I wanted to see what all the fuss was about exactly regarding the controversy that this story has received online and the controversy that this movie received recently with the reviews that it was getting. So I decided when I started to read the book, I'm just going to set my opinions and political feelings aside and just see what this story had to say, especially from the point of view of J.D. Vance. And to my amazement and to my surprise, I agreed with him on certain elements. Like, yes, I may not 100% agree with everything that comes out of his mouth and agree with 100% of the stuff that he wrote in this book, but there was some stuff that I could understand where he was coming from exactly, and I could understand some of what he was attempting to say and what he was trying to say, and about how sometimes you can't rely on the government to solve your problems, The government doesn't have all of the answers. And sometimes all you can do is rely on yourself, and that's also something I believe in. It's just sometimes all you can do is just rely on yourself in order to be the person that you really want to be, no matter who it is and who you are, especially. And that's definitely something I got out of reading Hillbilly Elegy. One of my favorite things about Hillbilly Elegy was reading about the camaraderie and the relationship that J.D. had with his grandmother, who he refers to as Memoir. I definitely liked reading about how much of an influence, how much of an impact, and how much of an influence that Memoir had on her grandson, J.D., and how she shaped him to become the man that he became and who he currently is now. I just liked reading about how Mama, she's very gritty and she's tougher than nails, and you find that out as you're reading that she's faced a lot of demons and a lot of hardships. Earlier on in the book, you read about how, unfortunately, as a teenager, she lost a child. She gave birth to a child that died at childbirth, and it definitely placed an emotional and personal scar, I think, on her throughout the rest of her years that she lived. And that was definitely very melancholic to read about how she lost a child at such a young age and all the dreams that she was never able to accomplish because of all the hardships and the setbacks that she experienced. And you see that as you're perusing this particular book. In addition, a thing that struck me about Hillbilly Elegy was the passages talking about Barack Obama. Now, however you feel about Barack Obama as a former president and as a person and as a politician, that's up to you. That's your opinions, that's your views. Fine. But what struck me about Hillbilly Elegy was some of the parts where J.D. Vance had positive things to say about Barack Obama. At times he says about how Barack Obama is very well spoken and he's very well educated, which I can understand, and I really see his sentiments there, especially regarding this former president. Keep in mind, this book was published in 2016. This book was published towards the end of his second and final term as president. One of the things, a favorite thing that I liked about reading Hillbilly Elegy was J.D. Vance's personal successes and triumphs. Now, despite all of the abuse and all of the addiction and all of the shouting and screaming matches that J.D. experienced and faced from his family being so extremely dysfunctional, it was just amazing and fascinating to see how he was able to overcome everything that came from his past and become a better man and become a better person. And you see that later on during the second half of this particular book. And I think part of the reason why he was able to overcome all this and why he was able to make a life for himself in a good way was in the impact and the influence that Memoir had on him, and how she was very much a parental figure in his life when his mother couldn't be. It's unfortunate, that his mother wasn't a positive example for him growing up. So it was really moving to see Memoir take her grandson under his wing and push him to become a better man and to become a better person and to become self-sufficient and don't end up in jail or end up working a dead-end job and living on food stamps. And I just think that was very incredible to read, how he was able to make his story very much into a rags to riches story. Riches, however you want to interpret that part. After he graduated from high school in Ohio, in the book and in real life, J.D. Vance, he served 4 years in the Marine Corps. After serving 4 years in the Marine Corps, J.D. Vance went on to enroll at Ohio State University. Following his graduation from Ohio State University, he gets accepted and he enrolls into Yale Law School. From there, he's able to graduate from Yale Law School, and it's just so incredibly impressive, everything that he was able to accomplish and everything that he was able to achieve, especially given that he came from this extremely working class background and this working class family where his chances of success are really low. And JD talks about how there's so many constraints and so many setbacks for people of his ilk and people from his particular background and from families very much like his. So it was just amazing to see him go on to achieve and did what he did, from serving in the Marine Corps and graduating from Ohio State and subsequently Yale Law School. It's also amazing to read how in this book he's able to find the love of his life at Yale Law School, and now in real life he's happily married, he has a good career, he has a good job, he's married with a wife and 2 young children. So I'm happy for him, and I wish him well wherever he is, wherever he goes from here, especially after reading Hillbilly Elegy. Ultimately, I'm glad that I took the time to read Hillbilly Elegy. At first, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I was hesitant and reluctant to read this book, but I'm glad I did, and glad I took the time to get to know J.D. Vance and his family. And after I got done reading this book, it definitely made me reflect and definitely made me think about myself and where I came from and where I originated, and definitely I could see some similarities between JD and myself. We both come from working class backgrounds. We come from working class families. We both come from bucolic rural settings, except whereas he grew up largely in Ohio, I grew up in upstate/western New York State. On the other hand, he definitely had a more hectic, rough childhood and upbringing. Ultimately, I'm glad that he was able to create and make a better life for himself, thanks to the positive influences that he was able to find and hang on to as he grew up and during and after finishing high school. Would I recommend Hillbilly Elegy? Yes, I would definitely recommend this book. Now, I understand some people might be turned off. They may not like this particular book in particular for personal and political reasons. And you know what? That's fine. That's okay, to each his own, you know. But when I read this book, I didn't see it as a pro-Trump book, as a vote for Trump book. It's not, you know. It's just a book about one man's perspective. It's about one man's point of view and everything that he experienced and everything that he witnessed from growing up in a working class family in Ohio and reflecting on his family that originated from Kentucky and later settled in Ohio, and how that impacted and how that shaped him to become the man he became and the man he currently is now during and after the publication of this book. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. I understand if some people are turned off by this book, and that is totally fine, but I hope some people will give it a chance, you know, and maybe it'll get them to reflect and think about their own experiences and their own upbringings, coming from a bucolic rural setting or working class background or a working class family especially. Now I want to toss the ball into your court. Let me know in the comments section. What did you think of Hillbilly Elegy? Did you like this book? Did you dislike this book? Let me know in the comments section. Also, let me know in the comments section, what were your thoughts on J.D. Vance? Do you like this author? Did you dislike this author? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear, peruse, and read about it from each and every one of you. In addition, have you seen the Netflix adaptation of Hillbilly Elegy? Let me know in the comments section. Did you like the movie? Did you dislike the movie? How does it compare to the book that I discussed just now in this video? Let me know about all of that down below in the comments. I can't wait, and I look forward to hearing and reading about it from every one of you. That is all for the video today. If you enjoyed and liked this video, be sure to hit the like button, the thumbs up sign. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing for new content here on this channel. Thank you so much for going out of your way and taking the time to watch this video in particular. In my follow-up video, in my next video, I will be discussing and revealing my thoughts on Netflix's adaptation of, you guessed it, Hillbilly Elegy, directed by Ron Howard and starring Amy Adams, Glenn Close, Gabriel Basso, Haley Bennett, and Frida Pinto among the main cast. I can't wait to express and share how I felt and what my reaction was to watching this particular film. That is all for the video today. I hope you all have an amazing day, evening, or night, whenever and wherever you are watching this now. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Again, have a great day, evening, or night. Take care, everybody. Bye!